Hello and welcome to the Stronghold Digital Mining Daily Update. Today is Tuesday, May 23rd, 2023. So for day 6, we successfully closed above $1 a share. That's really important, as I've emphasized numerous times, and we want to try to stay focused on one thing at a time. So right now the focus is on the stock price. I'm very pleased by the fact that we've continued to maintain a minimum bid price of at least $1 or more since we performed our reverse stock split last week. So we basically have through the rest of this week, and then because next Monday is a holiday, we basically have to finalize this on Tuesday of next week, which would, I believe, be May 30th. Really critical that we stay focused and that we do this so that then we can really turn our attention more fully, more completely to our operations. I've been doing a lot of number crunching, and I'm more convinced than ever before that we definitely need to focus on achieving as much revenue, profitable, right, useful revenue as possible. Now, as I've said many times before, right, there are several things that we do not control. We can't control the price of Bitcoin. We really have no influence over the, Bitcoin network hash rate, and we don't really have any control over PJM grid prices. So as I've alluded to previously, right, our two primary revenue inputs are selling electricity to the PJM grid, and then we get compensated for doing so, or alternatively using the electricity that we generate ourselves, right, or that we import from the PJM grid to essentially mine Bitcoin and derive revenue that way. So while we don't have control over Bitcoin prices as well as the Bitcoin network hash rate, nor do we have control over grid prices, we do have an incredible amount of influence and control over our own operations and maintenance expenses, right? Our general and administrative expenses, to a degree, right? We can kind of really try to drive down as best we can the cost of fuel. Those are things that are within our control. The ability to, in a win-win manner, renegotiate various agreements with some of our lenders, right? Those are things that are within our control. Everything that we've been able to influence and exert some amount of control over as a company, right? Stronghold Digital Mining has done that. And I think when you judge our performance specifically from that perspective, things are looking really good. The challenge, of course, right, is that we don't have control over Bitcoin prices, right? Nor do we have control over grid prices. So when it comes to generating revenue, we, like other companies in the Bitcoin mining ecosystem, are somewhat at the mercy of, right, circumstances, right, that are beyond our control. Now, as I've mentioned before as well, there are a variety of catalysts that have the potential to influence the price of Bitcoin. And the one that's probably, arguably, front and center, at least right now, is what's taking place, generally speaking, within the United States government, right? There's in very simple terms, there's a ongoing debate as to how to handle the issuance of additional debt, which would in turn allow the government to continue, spending money at the rate and at the level that it does spend money. And, to the extent that there is a breach, right, be it a technical default, however you want to describe this, right? Maybe there's a couple of days that go by where there's a default of some kind. I think it's very plausible that we might see some incredible turbulence in the financial markets, which would affect Stronghold Digital Mining, right? We have a publicly traded stock. So that's something that on the downside could be problematic if we find ourselves in a situation where there's just this incredible microburst, to sort of borrow some weather terminology, of like really inclement weather with really strong downdrafts, right? That kind of like act to suppress stock prices generally. That could be a little bit of an issue insofar as our stock price remaining above $1 a share. Now, my expectation is that we'll be able to weather that storm. But that said, I do think it's prudent to at least mention that there could be some upheavals in the financial markets generally, if we were to see a situation where the American government, defaults, again, whatever phraseology is most appropriate to define this event, where there's suddenly a scramble, to figure out how payments should be diverted or made, or who should get paid, who shouldn't get paid. These are all things that I suspect might have, initially at least, a bit of a downward, exert some downward pressure on financial markets, at least, American financial markets. It's plausible that Bitcoin could get caught up in that a bit. However, I do ultimately think this is going to be a very early test, to the extent that we go through this, right? Where we're literally dealing with a situation where, we're grappling with a world after an American default of some type. I think we're going to have an opportunity to see if Bitcoin lives up to what I believe is fair to say is the promise that I think many within the Bitcoin ecosystem have espoused, right? This promise that, hey, Bitcoin can be over the long term more of a safe haven as compared to, for example, being in fiat currencies, right? Or being in sovereign debt, or, so on and so forth. So it's a catalyst. It's a potential catalyst, I believe. But bear in mind that there could also be a little bit of a downdraft to our stock price if financial markets get obliterated, because suddenly now there's this new reality to contend with, that perhaps the full faith and credit, so to speak, of the American government is maybe not, what it was assumed to be. So that's going to be a really important catalyst, which incidentally kind of coincides with our attempt, right, to finish this 10 consecutive days of achieving a minimum bid price of $1 a share or more. So my expectation is that we're going to get through this, but it may not be without some turbulence along the way. So that's what I'm kind of focusing on, at least in the very short term. But then, once we get past this whole stock situation, this whole stock price scenario, right? There's been a lot of drama regarding it for what seems like ages now. Once we get past this, I do want to turn, as I've said, really more fully to operations, and I've been doing a lot of math, and we're gonna want to talk about a couple things that are important to talk about, that need to be talked about, so that we are as collectively aware of various variables, right, as we probably should be as a community. And I don't mean to imply that as a negative thing or as a bad thing. It's more of a reality thing. Okay. So, with that said, let's stay positive, let's be great, and we'll see each other again tomorrow.